So if you want to get into property, one of the biggest challenges that can stop you could be not having enough funds to do the deal in the first place. So how do you fund the purchase, the refurbishment, all the costs involved on that next property project? Now, I've been involved in property for over a decade. I've bought over 45 properties now, and I've raised millions of pounds of other people's money to fund those projects over the years. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the most important things I've learned along the way, so how you can move forward more quickly in your property journey using that experience that I've had. So first of all, when it comes to raising finance, it's really about adding value. So I talk a lot about adding value in property. How do you add a bedroom? How do you reconfigure a property to maybe move a kitchen or add a bathroom to add maximum value? Now, when it comes to raising finance, it's really about how much value you can bring as an individual. So how much value can you bring to someone else? For instance, if you've got the time, the knowledge, the expertise to go out, find a great deal, manage the refurbishment process from start to finish, deal with the contractors, deal with the solicitors, deal with the agents, for someone who perhaps doesn't have the time, knowledge, expertise, or inclination to do that, but they do have the money, well, that can be a great value that you can bring to them. And that's a synergy there. They've got the money that they can bring, that's value to you, and you've got that experience, that knowledge you can bring for them. So it's a great synergy and you can work well together. So adding value is crucial. And part of the biggest ways of adding value is finding a genuinely good deal. Not an okay deal, but a really good deal where there's enough profit to be able to justify them wanting to work with you, knowing that they'll get paid back, that the risk is worth it. So really focus on finding that good deal and adding as much value as possible. Secondly, need to think about solving a problem. Can you solve a problem for that potential investor? So it's easy to make the mistake of just wanting everybody to be your investor. But if someone has a load of money that's perhaps being put to good use, so they've already got high yielding investments, essentially maybe they're already in property and they've got really good returns, well, they might not necessarily need you because you're not solving a problem. The key is to be able to solve a problem. Someone, if they have, on the other hand, money in the bank that's not working hard enough for them, and you can come along and offer them, say, an interest rate that's double than what they're getting at the moment, then that could be a problem solved for them, and ultimately that could fund your next deal. So if there's no problem solved, why would they bother? Why would they take the risk in working with you if they can't, or if they're already getting a really good return? So it's really just thinking about how you can add value and how you can solve a problem. Finally, when it comes to working with investors, you've got to think about how you can mitigate their risk. So whatever happens, they are taking some form of risk. Now, the great thing about property is you can offer actual tangible value for something that they're investing in. Now, when it comes to some startup businesses with a new product or service that could be amazing, it could be revolutionary, or it could fall flat on its face, an investor could literally lose everything. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't invest in startup businesses, because some can be amazingly successful and you can make a lot of money doing that, of course. It's just that when it comes to property, you can actually offer tangible value in the form of the asset. So if anything goes wrong, you could say to your investor, I can offer you a first charge. So if the project doesn't go to plan for whatever reason, you can actually have the property, essentially. They're going to never lose all of their money in that case. Of course, there's still risk involved, but that mitigates the risk massively for them. So if in the event that you can't pay them back for whatever reason, then they can actually get the property from you. It's called a first charge. It's something that mortgage lenders would readily insist on if you're taking a mortgage out on a house that you live in. So if you can't pay the mortgage, they'll repossess your property. So you're essentially just doing the same thing to mitigate risk. And also having a conversation with your investor in advance to say, for instance, if your plan is to flip the property, you make a big profit and it doesn't work out well for whatever reason, you don't achieve the figure that you want, would you consider the investor having the property, putting a mortgage on it as a buy-to-let, as an exit? Now, that would not be the ideal plan and that shouldn't happen, but what if it does? The fact that your investor is hearing that you are even considering worst case scenarios to protect their investment, that goes down well, because at the end of the day, they're putting money into the deal, there is still risk involved, so you need to be thinking about how you can mitigate that as much as possible and have that conversation from the outset. So you might be thinking, well, what do I do first? I'm new to property. Do I find my investor or do I find a good deal? What happens first? Now, of course, it's nice to have an investor lined up for your next deal. Of course, that's brilliant if you're in that situation. But I haven't always been. And one of the things about finding a good deal first is, even if you don't have an investor, it can make you more resourceful. It can make you want to ask the uncomfortable questions to find an investor in the first place. It can make you more willing to go out and get some rejections and hear no more than yes, to go out and find an investor, because you know there's money on the line here. There's something that you could actually lose out on. If you find a good deal, you don't have an investor, it makes you more resourceful to go and find one. So in an ideal scenario, you'd have got the investor waiting, but it's not always going to happen. And the great thing about finding good deals is it gives your investors or potential investors something to talk about with you. It can make the whole process of them deciding whether to invest with you more tangible. You're not just talking conceptually about the money that you're going to make them. You can say, this is a project I'm looking at. I'm considering purchasing it for this price. I'm going to sell it for this price, making this amount of profit. And they can actually see the evidence of what that could potentially bring. And of course, if that property then sells because you don't work together quickly enough, that's fine. But you've had the conversation, and you can then alert them the next time you get a good project come across your desk, as it were. So that just allows you to make the whole process more tangible for them. People like to be able to see what they potentially could invest in. So that's why it's good to start looking for deals, even if you don't have everything perfect lined up, because it can make you more resourceful. So I went to an auction once, and I got 2 properties at that auction for an investor I was working with at the time, and I thought that that investor would go and buy the 3rd one that I got an offer accepted on that auction night. Now, unfortunately, the investor didn't really wanted to, and that was it. It was done. That was his risk tolerance. I thought, no, I don't want to do the 3rd one. But I'd already bid at auction, so under auction terms, to get the 3rd one, and I had no money whatsoever to be able to afford that property at that time. But what did it do? It made me more resourceful to start making some phone calls, start speaking to some people to get an investor quickly, because I was under auction terms to buy it. I don't recommend that, by the way, because when you're under auction terms, if you can't complete on that purchase, you could lose a lot of money. But the point is, it made me more resourceful to go out there and get the finance. When you know there's money at stake, it can make you more resourceful. So sometimes waiting for everything to be perfect all the time isn't the best case scenario. So you've got to go out there and actually kind of do both things at once. Start doing some work to find deals and start doing some work to find investors. The two complement one another, and things are not always perfect. So you could also just find a great investor. By the time you actually then find a good deal, the investors put their money elsewhere. So don't wait for things to be perfect. You need to be able to do both at the same time. So hopefully those tips help when it comes to going out there and finding investment, finding money to fund those next deals of yours. Hopefully you've got some value out of this video. If so, go ahead, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and you'll see me again in the next one very soon.